Okay, let's get more information on the climate talks going on in Egypt, also the fallout we've heard just detailed in the EU. We are now joined by Saleem Ali. He is a professor of energy and environment at the University of Delaware. Also, he is an author of the new book, Earthly Order, How Natural Laws Define Human Life. Saleem, thank you so much for joining us. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to those two stories, but I thought they were
Yes.
very well laid out, especially Adel coming from Egypt, where he talked about the Secretary General saying, look, this is a time that we need to transition. Enough with the promises. It's easy to make these promises when there's a good economy going on globally, but it's very difficult to push those through, especially when inflation is being dragged down by so many countries. How do they move forward? How do they implement these measures? How do they take them off paper and show something tangible?
Yes, Sean. Well, I think both your stories are connected. And as far as the way to mitigate right now is concerned, given the demand for energy as it is and the limitations we have, there needs to be some reliable baseload power. And that's why the Europeans had to allow for natural gas and nuclear to be classified as green technologies. So if you want mitigation fast, then you need to allow for this. We live in a world which is suboptimal in terms of these criteria, and I think that the environmentalists are really shooting themselves in the foot if they're going to resist some level of baseload power from nuclear in the short term, because otherwise we will not be able to meet the targets as we need to regarding climate tipping points.
Well, you know, Saleem, they are doing a terrible job of meeting these guidelines anyhow. So I think the environmentalists would push back in a huge way and say, look, it is time to do something. So what is standing out at this year's meeting so far? How does the world make positive strides, yet appease all the others that still need something before they reach these carbon-free goals by anywhere from 2030 to 2060?
Well, the challenge is that we currently need to have two kinds of power delivery, but most of the climate mitigation is needed in the energy sector. And we cannot meet that with existing renewable energies. I mean, there's a clear, we would want to, but we just do not have the technological means to do so currently in terms of the infrastructure for batteries, for example, which your reporter alluded to. If you're going to use solar and wind, you need massive battery infrastructure. For that, we need critical metals, and there is resistance also around developing extraction of those metals. So the only other option is that you increase the life of some power plants, which may have a lower carbon footprint, or you opt for natural gas power plants, which have still a lower footprint than coal.
Now, several large economies are absent from this year's meeting. What's the message there? What does their absence tell the global community about climate action?
Well, the focus of the meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh is on climate finance. And so currently there is so much pressure on donors in terms of the Ukraine crisis and funding there, that there is kind of a donor fatigue syndrome because the meeting is on climate finance. Now, one good news at the meeting yesterday was that there was an inclusion of loss damage for a fund for loss and damage, as happened with the floods in Pakistan. There would be a fund created to address that. So some financing which will be specifically set aside for those kinds of extreme weather events. But apart from that, clearly the donors are distracted by so many other demands.
Yeah, I think that they're obviously be pulled in so many ways. But what is the risk of inaction? What will the impact have on day-to-day life? You've talked about the big storms in Pakistan. We've seen them all over the world, from Spain to Greece, obviously the United States, into Latin American countries.
Yes, I mean, the most palpable impact is going to be sea level rise. And because we have so much habitation in coastal areas, that is going to be immediate, even without the storms. If you're going to have polar melting, and for example, I'm heading to Antarctica tomorrow on a research trip, and if you're going to have a melting of the Antarctic ice sheet, and certainly in the Arctic, that sea level rise is going to be felt in all over the world, from Miami to Beijing, to Tianjin in China, So we have to think about what that's going to do, and we have to plan for what they're calling managed retreat from the coast. So that'll be immediate, but of course there are going to be changes in food patterns where crops are grown. There could be some places which are able to adapt to an advantage, and some of the northern latitudes, there may be greater arable land available and better climate conditions for growing crops. But overall, there's going to be a massive disruption which will need to be adapted to then.
Yeah. Saleem Ali, have a safe trip to the Antarctic, by the way. I'm incredibly jealous. We want to have you back on when you get back to hear what you found out. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. All right.